We are back with C.J. Jung, Psychology and Religion, West and East. In the book, A Psychological Approach to the Dogma of the Trinity, we are in Chapter 5. Really should get better with having Chapter 5 right here because it's a pain in the dick and I keep fucking forgetting about it. The problem of the fourths, and the reason I just don't say it is because I don't want to get the problem of the fourths wrong. I don't want to give you guys the wrong information. We are on subset 3 called General Remarks on Symbolism. We're right after the star, a little dot that separates apparently this third subsection into two different sublets. So here we go. In view of the special importance of quaternity symbolism, one is driven to ask how it came about the highly differentiated form of religion like Christianity reverted to an archaic triad, in other words, to construct this trinitarian God image with equal justification. One could also ask, as has in fact been done, with what right Christ is presumed to be a symbol of the self, since the self as is by definition a complexio oppositorium, whereas the Christ figure wholly lacks a dark side. In Dogma, Christ is sign macula peccati, unspotted by sin. Both questions touch on the same problem. I always seek the answer to such questions on empirical territory, for which reason I must now cite the concrete facts. It is a general rule that most geometrical or numerical symbols have a quaternary character. There are also ternary or trinitarian symbols, but in my experience they are rather rare. On investigating such cases carefully, I have found that they were distinguished by something that can only be called a medieval psychology. This does not imply any backwardness and is not meant as a valve judgment, but only as denoting a special problem. That is to say, in all these cases, there is so much unconsciousness and such a large degree of primitivity to match it that a spiritualization appears necessary as a compensation. The saving symbol is then a triad in which the fourth is lacking because it has to be unconditionally rejected. In my experience, it is of considerable practical importance that the symbols aiming at wholeness should be correctly understood by the doctor. They are the remedy with whose help neurotic disassociations can be repaired, by restoring to the conscious mind a spirit and an attitude which, from time immemorial, have been felt as solving and healing in the effects. They are representations, collectives, which facilitate the much-needed union of consciousness and unconsciousness. This union cannot be accomplished either intellectually or in a purely practical sense, because in the former case, the instincts rebel, and in the latter case, reason and morality. Even dissociation that falls within the category of the psychogenic neurosis is due to a conflict of this kind, and the conflict can only be resolved through the symbol. For this purpose, the dreams produce symbols, which in the last analysis coincide with these recorded throughout history, but the dream images can be taken up in the dreamer's consciousness and grasped by his reason and feeling only if his conscious mind processes the intellectual categories and moral feelings necessary for their assimilation. And this is where the psychotherapist often has to perform feats that tax his patients to the utmost. The synthesis of conscious and unconscious can only be implemented by a conscious confrontation with the latter, and this is not possible unless one understands what the unconscious is saying. During this process, we come upon the symbols investigated in the present study, and in coming to terms with them, we reestablish a lost connection with ideas and feelings which make synthesis of the personality possible. The loss of gnosis, i.e. knowledge of the ultimate things, weights much more heavily than is generally admitted. Faith alone would suffice too. Did it not happen to be a charisma whose true possession is something of a rarity, except in spasmodic form, where it otherwise we doctors could spare ourselves much thankless work. Theology regards our efforts in this respect with mistrust, full mean, while potently declining to tackle this very unnecessary task itself. It proclaims doctrines which nobody understands and demands a faith which nobody can manufacture. This is how things stand in the Protestant camp. The situation in the Catholic camp is more subtle. Of especial importance here is the ritual, with its sacral action, which dramatizes the living occurrence of archetypical meaning, and thus makes a direct impact on the unconscious. Can anyone, for instance, deny the impression made upon him by the sacrament of the Mass? If then again, the Catholic Church has the institution of confession and the director of conscience, what are of the greatest practical values when these activities devolve upon suitable persons? The fact that this is not always so proves unfortunately to be an equally great disadvantage. Thirdly, the Catholic Church possesses a richly developed and undamaged world of dogmatic ideas, which provide a worthy receptacle for the plethora of figures in the unconscious, and in this way give visible expression to certain vitally important truths, with which the conscious mind should keep in touch. The faith of Catholic is not better or stronger than the faith of Protestant, but a person's unconscious is gripped by the Catholic form no matter how weak his faith may be. That is why, once he slips out of this form, he may easily fall into a fanatical atheism of a kind that is particularly to be met with in Latin countries.